So, Americans, you think your F-22 is the king of the skies? Checkmate, I say. I saw an ad, actually. I saw kind of a promotional ad for a new fighter jet. Oh, and by the way, just parenthetically, I probably should mention I'm Bill Whittle here with Steve Green and Alfonzo Rachel sitting in for Scott Ott, who's at an undisclosed location. And we'll be back in the near future. But I'm just basically flipping through the internet as I am wont to do, and all of a sudden I see a picture of an airplane that I hadn't seen before, and that's rather unusual for me because I've seen a lot of airplane pictures. And this is what I discovered. Look at this. This is a new fighter jet called the Checkmate. And it is produced by Sukhoi for Russian forces, and I'm sure for sale overseas. And I took a look at this thing and I said, unlike most of the other stuff that I've seen from Russia that either looks like it was been copied off of a photo of something that we built or something you can still see the pop rivets on, this thing looks really, really, really pretty cool. It looks like it's going to be their single-seat lightweight fighter, essentially their equivalent of the F-16. And I always like a chance to talk about pretty airplanes, but I think we got a little more to talk about than this. Steve, when I first saw this picture, I thought, man, this might be the jet of the future, except for the fact that it's got a pilot in it. There's a pretty good case to be made that manned fighters are not really it. But the thing I really wanted to talk about is this. In the course of the time I've been studying aviation really since the early 70s, every few years there comes along, this is the F-15 killer, or this is the F-22 killer, or this is the Russian jet that'll do that, or this is the Chinese jet that'll do that. It always turns into vaporware. And just because a jet looks good doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to rule the skies, does it?
Yeah, the Russians are in a bit of a pickle here, and it's really kind of sad because, as I mentioned before the communists came in, the Bolsheviks, and ruined everything, Russia was industrializing, especially in Ukraine and Western Russia, faster than even Germany had in the 1880s.
Yep, more coal production than England. Yeah, they were just kicking butt.
They really were. And in terms of culture, they were the rival of France, whether you're talking about literature or music or food or dance. I mean, they were just, they sat on top of the world, and the communists ruined everything. And they've been fighting sort of this rearguard action with us since the start of the Cold War, and even now after the Cold War, on the technological front. That said, I think that the Checkmate is mostly going to be sold for export, less for the Russian Air Forces and more for, like Pakistan really needs to update their MiG-29s that are looking pretty aged right now, and they want something stealthier because India is probably going to be getting something stealthier. And the one that stands out in my mind is they're calling it now, I think, the Su-57. Its prototype name was the PAC-FA, I think, and it was going to be their, like you said, their F-22 killer. And I'm looking at this thing, and you can't see whether a plane is radar stealthy or not. But stealth isn't just about the radar return signature. It's also about things like your infrared signature. How hot are your engines getting? Right. And you'll look at the Su-57, and they've got these big metal nacelles sticking out the back of the damn jet. And I'm like,
didn't they cancel that jet? Didn't they just stop building?
Yeah, they're building it in smaller numbers than originally.
Yeah, because it's not doing what it's advertised to be doing. Apparently.
Planned. Yeah. So as I said, I'm looking at those cherry hot engines sticking out, thinking there's no way this is an F-22 killer. That said, the Russians are very good at building dogfighters. You can say that dogfighting is a thing of the past. It's all about stealth and beyond visual range missiles and all of that stuff.
We went down that road before, and that didn't turn out well.
Yeah, with the original F-4s, but they're going to need a lot of planes in order to get through the BVR stuff, If they do that, their dogfighting stuff is going to be phenomenal. And again, you can't actually look at a plane and know if it's going to be a good dogfighter. But I look at the Checkmate, and I'm pretty damn sure that's going to be a good dogfighter. A country like Pakistan would be lucky to have it.
Yeah, I can look at the Checkmate and say it looks like the kind of plane I would like to have someone buy me. It's a slick looking little thing, but Zoe, as Steve points out, looks aren't everything. Despite the three of us having built our reputations on our looks.
Yeah,
here's the thing. I'm a huge fan of John Boyd and his analysis of air to air combat, and basically what it comes down to is this. You put two pilots in perfectly equal airplanes and the better pilot's going to win every time. In fact, if you have a very good pilot in a significantly inferior airplane, he's going to win. And while these new jets continue to come out of Russia and China and so on, what doesn't seem to be coming out of Russia or China is the kind of training that we routinely put ourselves through. We not only fly a lot of flight hours in training, we have things like Red Flag and Top Gun, where we bring our best pilots in the world and fight and train the way that we're supposed to. We find jets that are as close to the actual enemy jets, and in many cases, they are the actual enemy jets. We've got a couple of MiG-29s, that kind of thing. And we train and we train and we train and we train and we train. And no one else seems to be doing that. There's enormous military fear of Russia, Zoe, but it's kind of tough for me to take it seriously when Russia consists of the Army of the People's Republic of China, and the Navy is the Navy of the Army of the People's Republic of China. It's the People's Republic of China's Army Navy. The two branches of the services don't talk to each other. There's enormous rivalry, just exactly the same thing that sunk Japan. You can build, I guess where I'm going with this, though, is you can build a nice piece of aluminum and titanium, but you can't necessarily build the culture that turns it into the deadliest of weapons.
Indeed, man. And if you want to give me a second, I'm going to call Scott and see what he has to say about this. And we'll go ahead and put him on FaceTime. No,
he doesn't know anything about this either.
Bill and I are the Navy and Air Force geeks. It's kind of sad, but I love it.
No, but,
let me help you out a little bit here.
No, but really quick. Go ahead.
Okay.
I was going to say.
I was just going to say the culture of America, the American culture of allowing, of not having such a hierarchical structure and training for real is something that's not reproduced anywhere else.
I can dig it, man. And folks might be surprised by this. The first job that I actually, when we think about what do I want to do when I grow up, what I wanted to do when I grew up, at some point that'll happen, is I actually wanted to be an aeronautical engineer. That was my dream. That's what I wanted to do. But I fell under the spell of rock and roll, man, and I've been trying to pursue that ever since. But
that and math.
Yeah. When I think that they want to call this aircraft, the Checkmate. That name is almost like a slap in the face, not just because of like some assumption of air superiority or anything like that, but it's like they're looking at our culture, just like you said, man. They're looking at our culture, and it's like, wow, America, you guys are becoming a bunch of pawns. You know what I'm saying? You and not just pawns in your own country, but you guys are becoming pawns in this whole global system that's coming upon you, that's coming upon the whole world. You guys really are a bunch of pawns. When we're looking at your military, we're not worried. We got your chiefs making arguments for people being transgender in your ranks. So they're like, look, man, this is checkmate. You pawns are positioning this for us. Now speaking of me being wanting to be an aeronautical engineer, I can dig this aircraft, man, because not to toot my own horn or anything like that. I'm like looking at it, I'm like, I probably would have designed something like that. That's pretty fly. That's a pretty fly aircraft. It's like it's got that F-16 element going for it. This time like kind of like cross between an F-35. I don't know if it's got, is it the F-35 or the F-22 that's got the vertical takeoff and landing? Is that
the F-35?
F-35. Okay, so I don't know if the Checkmate is able to do that, and it's like Bill says, you could have an aircraft of these kind of characteristics, and it looks really pretty and stuff like that. Like as an American, the only thing I'm concerned with is how pretty does it explode.
That's true.
That's the thing that I'm thinking about as far as that goes, but. And I don't know at what point it's going to be implemented. I don't know who's going to be buying it and stuff like that. And that's another thing about it too. Is like is what's the economic impact of it? How much does it cost to keep that thing flying? Things like that. And I think maybe with their aircraft is kind of like indicative of, I guess, about like their conditions and stuff like that. When we look at like our aircraft is, they're hardcore machines, but they're very, from what I understand about, they're like kind of delicate, whereas like, Russian aircraft is like built, it's like tanks, like fighter tanks in the air. They're built for that kind of stuff. And it's kind of like reflective of, the person who's flying them. And I'm not, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to put our personnel down. I'm not trying to put our country down, but sometimes it's a little bit of tough love and say, hey, there's some things that we need to recognize here.
Yeah.
And the mindset of the people who are flying these things and the way that these things are built to reflect that kind of mindset, while we've got this kind of like cell phone culture over here that is very, into their creature comforts and stuff like that. And our aircraft kind of being built the same way, kind of like in that delicate fashion where you got to operate them, with a soft touch and whatnot. We got our military, I guess, maybe only rivaled by Israel in terms of like air combat. It's definitely nothing to sneeze at. But like I said, with them going after this angle, calling it the checkmate, I think that's, like I said, it's a little bit of like a wake up call for what's going on in here in America, how it's reflective of people in the culture and how we can perform in the sky.
Well, there's no question that American technological superiority in this kind of thing is still far, far ahead of any other competitors in the world. But Zoe put his finger right on it. How pretty is this airplane when it explodes? The United States Air Force for 50, 60 years now has been referring to itself as the largest distributor of MiG parts in the world, and that is a reputation that they would like to maintain. But as we continue to see the use of the military as a sociological testing ground, you come to the conclusion that I come to again and again and again, and that is there is nothing on the planet that is even remotely capable of approaching 11 nuclear-powered carrier strike groups. But if you do not have the command structure that's willing to use those things, if you've got generals who are more concerned about tattoos on their personnel rather than their operational readiness, if you're limiting training flights because you're worried about greenhouse gas emissions, if you do all of the things that we see happening, what you end up with is the world's most powerful sword in the arm of a person who no longer has the strength to even lift it, let alone wield it. They understand very clearly that the American sword, the actual sword, is unbeatable. And so they continue to put all of their efforts into weakening the sword arm and weakening the will to use it. And this is what is a little alarming to me. I'm not afraid of the Checkmate. I'm not afraid of whatever new jet is coming out. I know for a fact, for example, that the J-20, I think it is, the Chinese stealth jet, it's a joke. It's got a radar cross section of a container ship. I know that when you see the jets going off of the Chinese carriers with the jump jets, a guy in the Air Force I know pointed out to me, you may notice that they're not carrying any weapons. I said, I did notice that. It's because if they carry weapons, they can't fly off the carrier. Their engines aren't strong enough. These are the kind of things that make me reassured. But then I see General Milley. That'll do it for this edition of Right Angle, made possible by the members at BillWhittle.com. If you like this content, we'd love to have you join a team of citizen producers. You can join us as a member, make a one-time donation if you'd like. But until next week, for Alfonzo Rachel, for Steve Green, for our friend Scott Ott, who's not with us, I'm Bill Whittle, and we'll see you next time on Right Angle.